You need dry clothes, August told her. I'll air dry, Rosalind said, and she stretched out on the cot, making the legs on it bow. You'll have to come into the house to use the bathroom, August said. We don't lock the doors, so just come on in. Rosalind's eyes were closed. She had already drifted off and was making little puff noises with her mouth. August lowered her voice. So she fell down the steps? Yes, ma'am. She went down head first, caught her foot in the rug at the top of the stairs, the one my mother hooked herself. The secret of a good lie is don't overly explain, and throw in what good detail. Well, Miss Williams, you can start work tomorrow, she said. I stood there wondering who she was talking to. Who was Miss Williams when I remembered I was Lily Williams now? That's the other secret to lying. You have to keep your story straight. Zach will be away for a week, she was saying. His family has gone down to Polly's Island to visit his mama's sister. If you don't mind me asking, what will I be doing? You'll work with Zach and me making the honey, doing whatever needs doing. Come on, I'll give you the tour. We walked back to the large room with the machines. She led me to a column of white boxes stacked one on top of the other. These are called supers, she said, setting one on the floor in front of me and removing the lid. From the outside, it looked like a regular old drawer pulled out of the dresser, but inside it were the frames of honeycomb hung in a neat row. Each frame was filled with honey and sealed over with beeswax. She pointed her finger. That's the uncapper over there, where we take the wax off the comb. Then it goes through the wax melter over here. I followed her, stepping over bits and pieces of honeycomb, which is what they had instead of dust bunnies. She stopped at the big metal tank in the center of the room. This is the spinner, she said, patting the side like it was a good dog. Go on up there and look in. I climbed up the two-step ladder and peered over the edge, while August flipped a switch and an old motor on the floor sputtering and cranked. The spinner started slowly gaining speed like the cotton candy machine at the fair until it was sending heavenly smells into the atmosphere. It separates out the honey, she said, takes out the bad stuff, leaves in the good. I've always thought how nice it would be to have spinners like this for human beings. Just toss them in and let the spinner do its work. I looked back at her, and she stared at me with her ginger cake eyes. Was I paranoid to think that when she'd said human beings, what she really meant was me? She turned off the motor, and the humming stopped with a series of ticking sounds. Bending over the brown tube leading from the spinner, she said, from here it goes into the baffle tank, then over into the warming pan, and finally into the settling tank. That's the honey gate where we fill the buckets. You'll get the hang of it. I doubted it. I'd never seen such a complex situation in my life. Well, I imagine you'll want to rest up like Rosalind. Supper is at 6. You like sweet potato biscuits? That's May's specialty. When she left, I lay on the empty cot while rain crashed on the tin roof. I felt like I'd been traveling for weeks, like I'd been dodging lions and tigers on a safari through the jungle, trying to get to the lost diamond city buried in the Congo, which happened to be the theme of the last matinee I'd seen in Sylvan before leaving. I felt that somehow I belonged here. I really did, but I could have been in the Congo for how unfamiliar it felt. Staying in a colored house with colored women, eating off their dishes, lying on their sheets. It was not something I was against, but I was brand new to it, and my skin had never felt so white to me. T. Ray did not think colored women were smart. Since I want to tell the whole truth, which means the worst parts, I thought they could be smart, but not as smart as me being white. Lying on the cot in the honey house, though, all I could think was August is so intelligent, so cultured, and I was surprised by this. That's what let me know I had some prejudice buried inside me. When Rosalind woke from her nap, before she had a chance to raise her head off the pillow, I said, Do you like it in here? I guess I do, she said, working to get herself to a sitting position. So far. Well, I like it too, I said, so I don't want you saying anything to mess it up, okay? She crossed her arms over her belly and frowned. Like what? Don't say anything about the Black Mary picture I got in my bag, okay? And don't mention my mother. She reached up and started twisting some of her loose braids back together. Now, how come you want to keep that a secret? I hadn't had time to sort out my reasons. I wanted to say, because I just want to be normal for a little while, not a refugee girl looking for her mother, but a regular girl paying a summer visit to Tiburon, South Carolina. I want time to win August over, so she won't send me back when she finds out what I've done. And those things were true. But even as they crossed my mind, I knew they didn't completely explain why talking to August about my mother made me so uneasy. I went over and began helping Rosalind with her braids. My hands, I noticed, were shaking a little. Just tell me you weren't going to say anything, I said. It's your secret, she said. You do what you want with it. The next morning I woke early and walked outside. The rain had stopped and the sun glowed behind a bank of clouds. Pine woods stretched beyond the honey house in every direction. I could make out about 14 beehives tucked into the trees in the distance. The tops of them posted stamps of white shine. The night before, during dinner, August had said she owned 28 acres left to her by her granddaddy. A girl could get lost on 28 acres in a little town like this. She could open a trapdoor and disappear. Light spilled through a crack in a red-rimmed cloud, and I walked toward it along a path that led from the honey house into the woods. I passed a child's wagon loaded with garden tools. It rested beside a plot growing tomatoes tied to wooden stakes with pieces of nylon hose. Mixed in with them were orange zinnias and lavender gladiolus that dipped toward the ground. The sisters loved birds, I could see. There was a concrete bird bath and tons of feeders, hollowed-out gourds, and rows of big pine cones sitting everywhere, each one smeared with peanut butter. Where the grass gave way to the woods, I found a stone wall crudely cemented together, not even knee-high but nearly 50 yards long. It curved on around the property and abruptly stopped. It didn't seem to have any purpose to it. Then I noticed tiny pieces of folded-up paper stuck in the crevices around the wall, or around the stones. I walked the length of the fence, and it was the same all the way, hundreds of these bits of paper. I pulled one out and opened it, but the writing was too blurred from the rain to make out. I dug another one. Birmingham, September 15th, 4 little angels dead. I folded it and put it back, feeling like I'd done something wrong. Stepping over the wall, I moved into the trees, picking my way through little ferns with their blue-green feathers, careful not to tear the designs the spiders had worked so hard on all morning. It was like me, and Rosalind really had discovered the lost Diamond City. As I walked, I began to hear the sound of running water. It's impossible to hear that sound and not go searching for the source. I pushed deeper into the woods, the growth turned thick, and sticker bushes snagged my legs, but I found it. A little river, not much bigger than the creek where Rosalind and I had bathed. I watched the currents meander, the lazy ripples that once in a while broke along the surface. Taking off my shoes, I waded in. The bottom turned mushy, squishing up through my toes. A turtle plopped off a rock into the water right in front of me, nearly scaring the Lord Jesus out of me. There was no telling what other invisible creatures I was out here socializing with. Snakes, frogs, fish, a whole river world of biting bugs, and I could have cared less. When I put on my shoes and headed back, the light poured down in shafts, and I wanted it to always be like this. No T-Ray, no Mr. Gaston, nobody wanting to beat Rosalind senseless, just the rain-cleared woods and the rising light.